I have a movie of it. This is the first Rath Yatra. It was in the summer of '67. That's Jamuna. This is in the present. That's the ball dancing wildly. See the finger symbols. Those are very popular. This is in the San Francisco temple.
Jai Jagannath.
Those are carved by Shakshundra. He did 4 sets. Jagannath came to New York in 1969. There's Prakamashi. That was named by Prabhupada. It means the big boss. Because he's standing like the big boss. No, but if when you see the car, the pickup truck with the flatbed, all 3 of them are there. Yeah. There's the pickup truck and the flatbed. And we have our own dancers. With police escort. This is 1967. Summer.
Haribol.
We had these little Jagannath. These came from San Francisco. This is a real story to hear. How did Jagannath get around our necks? Well, it happened in San Francisco. The devotees would go to a store called Plus Imports. And it was owned by an Indian. And he imported all kinds of handicrafts from India. And devotees would go there to get their Indian clothes, beads, all kinds of stuff. And they saw these little figurines of Jagannath. Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balaram. And they brought them back. They said, it must have some significance. And they wanted to ask Prabhupada, what is this? Because it looked like an Indian totem pole. You stack them up on top of each other. The American Indians, they worship the totem pole. And if you put these figurines on top of one another, they look like an American Indian totem pole. Right? So the people thought that. So they asked Prabhupada, what is the significance? As soon as Prabhupada saw it, he bowed down. Jagannath has come to us. And that's how Jagannath came. And that's how San Francisco became New Jagannath Puri. And that's how the first deity of ISKCON was installed in San Francisco in March of 1968. That was the first deity. That wasn't the first deity. We got the first deity, me and Brahmananda, of Madan Mohan, which was donated by an Indian, which is now in Potomac Temple. That was the first deity of ISKCON. That came to us before Jagannath. As soon as Prabhupada left for San Francisco in '67 in January, about a week after he left, that deity, Madan Mohan, came to us. So that came before Jagannath. But it wasn't installed until much years later. But the first installed deity was Lord Jagannath in San Francisco in March of 1968. The first Rath Yatra, of course, was in '67.
Brahmananda, right?
Yeah, these are just the Brahmananda. My dear Brahmananda, on due receipt of your letter of the 28th instant, I was very much eager to get the records, but they are still delayed. Now, the first record was Krishna Consciousness, and it was made before Prabhupada went to San Francisco. It was made in December. One record producer, Mr. Coleman, he went to Tompkins Square Park on a weekend and witnessed the chanting of Hare Krishna. And he wanted to make a record of it. So he called the temple, and Brahmananda arranged a meeting between Mr. Coleman and Prabhupada. This was in December, before San Francisco. And Mr. Coleman came, he says, I want to record your kirtan. But Prabhupada was not very interested. He said, because people listen to one record and then they listen to another record. There's no benefit to it, he said. But Mr. Coleman said, but you can speak. He said, oh, I can speak? Then I will do. And that's where Prabhupada was able to explain the mantra on that record, as well as sing the mantra. And so we made that record, and it was quite a story how we made that record, because Prabhupada didn't have a mridanga. And how are you going to lead kirtan without a mridanga? We couldn't use that little tom-tom. We called it a bongo drum. That wasn't a very good drum. But the night before, a strange thing occurred. An African man came with a big wooden mridanga. It was this long, and it was very heavy. It was made of wood, and it had blocks of wood all around it where you could pull the straps and change the tone of either side of the drum, the small side and the big side. Change the tone. And we asked him, can we use this for the recording? He said, oh yeah, can we keep it overnight? Oh yes. And Prabhupada experimented on it and played it, and that drum was used on that Hare Krishna record, the Krishna Conscious record. And it was perfect. We didn't have cartels though. That came, we had one pair of cartels on it, which Narayan Maharaj sent to Prabhupada. Prabhupada ordered 10, but he only sent one. So we had one pair of cartels. Then we brought some bells and finger cymbals. I found finger cymbals. I used to sell them in the temple. It was good income because everybody would buy the finger cymbals. They cost me $3. I'd sell them for $7 and gave the money to the temple. I had a little gift shop in the rear of the temple and sell. I had to live in this very poor and dejected area of New York City. It was a slum area, industrial and residential. The government of New York City leased these apartments, very old buildings. These buildings were they were built in the early 1900s. And you can see the sign up here, it says AIR, that's Artist in Residence. If you were an artist, the government would lease you a very cheap apartment that covered the whole floor of a building, and that's where Prabhupada stayed. And he was able to cook hold class, take his bath, everything. That was his first preaching center, was in the Bowery. And he had a continuous flow of people that were coming to him until he was able to get and move to 26 Second Avenue, which was only about 10 minutes away on the borderline of the Bowery. And this is an artist's conception of what 26 Second Avenue looked like. And Haridas painted this watercolor of Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan, and that was placed in the window of this storefront, which was called Matchless Gifts. And that name remained. They wanted to block it out, but Prabhupada said, no, keep it, because he was offering a matchless gift. So we're going to prove by reading the letters written to Brahmananda from Prabhupada, how Prabhupada was managing the whole society through these letters. Because this was not the age of computers. There was everything was done by letters, and it usually took for a letter to arrive 3, 4, up to 5 days locally, and internationally at least a week. And that's how Prabhupada was managing the whole society through the whole world, especially in Europe. He telling people how to do everything through letters. So, Prabhupada was with us in New York from July 1966 till January, the middle of January of 67. That's when he was invited to go to San Francisco for the Mantra Rock program. This was a poster designed by Haridas for the Mantra Rock, which happened on January 29th. And all the famous rock groups of the day were also attending that program where Prabhupada introduced the Hare Krishna mantra. So he left around January 15th, and it was Prabhupada's first airplane ride. He never was in an airplane before. So you can imagine what he was thinking, climbing aboard an airship that he was never trained in flying. He knew how to take a ship because he came to America by ship, which took 37 days from India, where he crossed many oceans. He crossed the Arabian Sea, the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, the Atlantic Ocean, crossed many oceans, dangerous oceans, because it was hurricane season. Nobody travels during hurricane season across the seas. And that's where Prabhupada got his 2 heart attacks, was in the Arabian Sea, where the waves were only 3 or 4 feet high. The Atlantic, they go up to 40 feet high. And that's in the regular hurricane season. But if there's an actual hurricane, they go up to 100 feet high. But Prabhupada, when he reached the Atlantic, it was like a mirror. And the captain, who had 35 years experience, said never in his life did he see the Atlantic so calm for Prabhupada during hurricane season. It was like a mirror, no waves. So this was, and Prabhupada said that's because Krishna was guiding the Jaladuta. And the name of the Jaladuta is Messenger of the Sea. And Prabhupada was carrying the message of Bhagavad, the message of Krishna. So they go hand in hand. So anyway, this mantra rock, so Prabhupada left New York on January 15th. Now, we in New York, most of the devotees there had only 3, 4, 5, 6 months, up to 6 months association with Prabhupada. There was no real missionary activity going on. Prabhupada was doing all the missionary. He was preaching, he was cooking, he was writing. We were assisting just in typing. Most everybody had jobs, working for the city or private jobs. Satsarup was working for the city, Rupanu was working for the city, Brahmananda was a school teacher working for the city. So we couldn't really do any missionary activities for Srila Prabhupada. So everything was being done by Prabhupada. Now Prabhupada was leaving. Who's going to do these things? Who's going to give class? Who's going to lead kirtan? We never led kirtan. Prabhupada led the kirtan. Who's going to do class? Who's going to do the love feast? Prabhupada was cooking the samosas and the kachoris and the new recipes. We knew how to boil water and put some potatoes, but that's all we knew. We knew how to burn the rice, so it was brown, and scraping it off the pot. We were expert at burning everything. Everything, even the cereal in the morning was burnt. So we were expert at burning everything, but we were not expert at cooking. And here Prabhupada's leaving, and now we have to do all these things. So this was a big change in our lives. In fact, I was 18 years old at that time. Now I'm 77. So I was the only one that didn't have a job. So my job was at the temple day and night. In fact, me and Brahmananda were the first ones to move in the temple storefront and sleep there at night and store our personal clothes underneath the Vyasasana. And we took our bath in the sink. There was a large sink in the storefront because we really didn't want to use Srila Prabhupada's bathroom. We said that's for the Acharya. We shouldn't use it for ourselves. Prabhupada didn't mind if we used it, but we minded it. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to show respect. And Prabhupada did tell us that taking bath means cleaning the 9 holes of the body. That's as good as taking bath. So that's what we did at the sink. We cleaned the 9 holes of the body, and that's as good as taking a bath. In those days, we didn't have tilak either. We had to use what artists call fuller's earth. It's used by sculptors to fill in cracks. It's used by artists. But they were not always in stock at the art store. So Prabhupada said we should use water for tilak. You could apply tilak by using water and saying the names of Vishnu. So we had to learn all these things, but now Prabhupada's leaving. What if we had all these questions? Who are we going to ask? So we were dumbfounded and at a loss that Prabhupada's leaving us. We had so much dependence upon him for doing everything. He was like our father. He acted like our father. Because if we had any personal problems, we would go and discuss with him, which we shouldn't have done because the Acharya is not meant for that personal. But that's how we treated Prabhupada, as our father. So we would go to him for all our problems. And here he's leaving us, and we didn't know when he was coming back. But he wanted to go because he came for his mission. And his mission was to open centers throughout the world. That was his most important aspect of Prabhupada. This was his mission, and second was writing books. So there was no way that we could attempt to allay Prabhupada from going to San Francisco. He was going. And he left it up to us. He had complete faith in us to carry on what he was teaching us before. It's amazing, actually, that he would have so much faith in a bunch of malechas and chandalas, sinners who broke all the four regulative principles, and yet he had faith that we would carry on what he was teaching us. Just see the pure devotee. He put so much faith in us. And we were sincere, we wanted to follow. I know I was the youngest one, so I was very careful who I associated with, because many of them were going to restaurants, vegetarian restaurants. There was a restaurant called The Paradox. Everybody, it was a microbiotic diet there. Brown rice, no spices, no dairy, and the newcomers would go there and eat their dinner or their lunch, but I wouldn't go because Prabhupada said we shouldn't eat in restaurants. Sometimes I would sneak out at 7 o'clock in the evening and have a slice of pizza because I was starving. Because there was no dinner, there was only lunch, which was at 12 or 1 o'clock, and then nothing until night. We only had milk and bananas with Prabhupada in his room. We had honey, sugar, milk, and it was powdered milk. We couldn't afford real milk. We had to use powdered milk. And that doesn't taste very good. But if you put a lot of sugar in, then it tastes good. And Kirtananda would do that. And bananas. And Prabhupada said, if you drink this at night, it will help you to rest very peacefully. And it did. It made us sleepy. And we would take that around 9:30, 10. After Prabhupada's class, we would all go up to his room for milk and bananas. Only 4 or 5 of us would stay back. All the guests would leave. Because the other people who had jobs had to go back and take rest because they had to get up early to go to work. So only a handful would stay back who didn't have to have jobs. So here we're stuck having to do all these things, and Prabhupada's leaving, and who's going to do the class? So we had for the first time, we had devotee meetings. Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Working together. This never existed before. We never had a devotee meeting, you see. Prabhupada did start Ishtagoshi, which was questions and answers, which we would discuss on our own after Prabhupada's class. We would ask questions amongst ourselves and some of the persons who were more expert in the philosophy, like Ray Rama, because he was an editor, Satsarup was an editor. So they were able to answer many questions that the younger devotees had, especially myself, because I was just 18 years old. I didn't go to college. I was uneducated. All that I learned from Prabhupada, how to do accounting. That's what I learned from Prabhupada. He taught me how to do the trial balance system, exactly how the banks in India do their system. He taught me that system. It's called the trial balance voucher system. Anyone who wanted money had to sign a paper and bring a receipt. And that's why I got the name Gargamuni. Not because I had money. I was 18 years old. I didn't have any money. But I kept Krishna's money. I didn't misspend it. And Prabhupada had complete faith. I was a stranger in his life. And he only had $900, I remember. That's all he had, was from selling his books by his own labor. Nobody gave donations. I mean, after class, he would pass around a basket with cut up apple as prasadam, and people would take one piece of apple and leave 25 cents, or leave $1, or 10 cents, like that. He would get $4 or $5 as donations, but nobody ever gave any donations. So it was up to Prabhupada to support the temple himself by selling his books. And he was only selling his books for $5 per volume. And devotees weren't buying the whole set of Bhagavatam that Prabhupada brought from India. They were buying one volume at a time at $5. And that's how Prabhupada was supporting the whole society. And now he's leaving, and we had to do all these things. We had to support the temple. So for the first time, we had to work together as a unit, as a devotee community. So our whole lives changed when Prabhupada left and went to San Francisco. So there was a movie when Prabhupada arrived in San Francisco. He was met by Allen Ginsberg, Mukunda, Shamsunda, a whole host of new people that were interested in Krishna consciousness. And there's a video of it that was made.
भूतले श्रीमती भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती नामिनी.
This is arriving at San Francisco airport. There's Ralph the dog. Shemshunda's dog. He loved kirtan. He was jumping and dancing. Prabhupada liked to see him dancing when he heard the Hare Krishna mantra. That's Allen Ginsberg. There's Mukunda behind Prabhupada. Murari, Murari is there. This is his arrival on around January 15th in San Francisco there. In a conversation, he used to study the Americans, how to present the Krishna conscious movement in a way that they could accept it.
Then, Prahlad Maharaj comments, the Tattva Upaya Sahasranam, there may be many.
This is all in 1967, in January.
Not very well.
Prabhupada stayed there January, February, March, up to the middle of April.
Prahlad Maharaj said, Sahasranam ayam bhagavato.
And that's when he wrote his first letters to Brahmananda. The first letter came on January 19th. I gotta carry 3 glasses with me. One for the computer, one for reading, and one for just seeing. So this is written on January 19th, 1967, and Prabhupada addresses it to all the major devotees in New York. My dear Brahmananda, Hari Griva, Kirtanananda, Satsarupa, Gargamuni, Achyutananda, and Jadharani. Please accept my greetings and blessings of Guru Gauranga Gidhari Gandhavika. Prabhupada never used that again. That's in other letters. This is the first time he used that. You have already got the news of our safe arrival and good reception by the devotees here. Mr. Allen Ginsberg and about 50 or 60 others received us at the airport when I arrived at my apartment. There were some press reporters also who took note of my mission. 2-3 newspapers like the Examiner and the Chronicles have already published a report. One of the reports is sent herewith. Please find. I wish that 1,000 copies of this report may be offset printed at once, and 100 copies of the same may be sent here as soon as possible. I have a copy of that. How do I get to the So this is the Examiner newspaper. Very nice article. Prabhupada wanted 1,000 copies at once, and he wanted 100 copies to be sent as soon as possible because it's a very nice